Welcome, everybody. It's November 26th. My goodness, we are now officially less than 1 month away from Christmas. And I don't know, I think Americans celebrate Christmas early. They have Thanksgiving, which is kind of a lot like Christmas. So I hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving, our partners to the south. I'm getting a bit of a feedback. I'm not sure where that's coming from. Hattie, I think it might be coming from your line. I'm going to try muting you first and seeing if that's it. That's it. And if you need to unmute to just chime in, feel free to do so. I just got back from Bogota, Colombia for their 15th anniversary celebration. They're just such an amazing group of people. So exciting to be there and be part of that celebration and vision. One of the things that was very prominent in that presentation by Luis Casuga and Gustavo Gomez was their call to action to the leaders of Colombia to think globally and to expand their reach into the North American market and the European market, but to get out of the country and while they're building locally, to also consider expansion into other markets through friends, relatives, etc. And that was a message that was endorsed by our CEO, Kurt Fuller, who was also present at the event. So this is really exciting news because it's kind of an idea that was birthed not that long ago. It was actually January of this year, if you recall, the idea of creating an expansion team and an expansion into the marketplace. And it looks like that vision has now been captured or caught on by the company itself. And that's huge. Great support. And of course, their support of the Torontonians Summit, or the Toronto Summit here in 2018 in October, this past October, was a demonstration of that kind of a commitment. And so 2019 promises to be a very, very explosive year internationally. So you're going to see a lot of international activity happening in 2019, because that is in fact a battle cry from all sides, from everywhere, from inside, outside, corporate, etc. So I expect that 2019 will be an incredibly super year for momentum, for gathering and establishing momentum. We've been sort of laying the foundation for that now for 2 years, so it's no surprise that it should come. But to have the Latino community focus their attention on helping expand in this market, I think is a huge win, a huge message. Let's see, what else can I tell you? Last week we concentrated, well, first of all, I want to say, hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving celebration, as we now turn our attention to Christmas as the next one. But something about this time of year where people have a tendency to think, hey, let's lay back a little bit. I don't know about you, I haven't checked, but I know the volume in Latin America is over 200% of the previous month. 200% increase in volume this month over last month. So I know they're not sleeping and slowing down. They're looking at these as opportunities, these times, and rightly so, by the way. I joined my Niken, or started my Niken career officially December 19th, 28 years ago. It'll be 28 years. And that 2 weeks at the end of December was the time that I used to make my outreach and create a small team. That small team included people like Bruce Black, Bo Tanis, and a number of other players who inevitably helped launch the market in January of 1992. So I looked at a 2-week launch window, the last 2 weeks of December, and launched officially in January. And so I don't know if that was logical or illogical. It was just what I did. And if you look back in hindsight, I wouldn't have done it any different. It was a really good way to get January off the ground. Primarily in December, the last 2 weeks of December, we're meeting people. We're in a celebratory mood where we go out of our way to say hello to people, to reach out to people, etc. And invariably, there's going to be conversations about the year, how it went, what's going on, what are you looking forward to, etc. So to be able to lead that conversation by, I can't wait till 2019, and they're going to say, why? What's so great about 2019? oh my God, we're launching our global company. We're globalizing this company. We've got so much work to do locally, but we're thinking bigger than that even. And so you always have something that you can share with people about why you might be excited about the upcoming time. And when it comes to recruiting anybody in this business, you're always selling the future. That's what you're always doing. So we're selling the story and the possibility of a better future for that individual. And we're able to sell that story because we have an amazing past. So it's not like fiction. It's not like, oh, we're going to roll the dice and hope this works. The one thing I knew in December of 1991 was that Nikken was going to succeed. In fact, in January of 1992, our official launch, in the third week of the month, we were officially shut down by Health Canada. Nikken was shut down in Canada by Health Canada. And yet that didn't stop us at all. Most of us set up distribution across the border in Buffalo. We would truck down there and bring a bunch of products back across the border. Why? Why would anybody do that? Well, a lot of people didn't. There was a lot of people who were part of that initial explosion who didn't see the future because they felt, okay, well, if Health Canada could step in and shut these guys down, I guess it's game over for them. But those of us who saw the future said, no, whatever the problem is, this company is 16 years old. They're a multi-billion-dollar multinational. I think they can figure it out, whatever the problem is. So let's just keep moving with the assumption that they will sort this out. What have we got to lose? And of course they did. Within 2 months, we had everything moving smoothly again. And in that 6 to 8 weeks that we were operating across the border, we just kept doing what we were doing, promoting Nikken with the future in mind. And so I think that's really important when it comes to recruiting to understand that you have a very, very strong position on the future based on the past. Now, I say that because some people look at the past and say, oh, our better days are behind us, or, oh, my better days were behind me, or etc. And by doing that, you're casting yourself into the future with that intention, with that understanding. And if anything that I've been doing where you're concerned over the last years, and more specifically in the focus on this book that I gave a copy of this book to Luis Kasuga yesterday, actually. Why? Because where two or more are gathered, I want everybody on the same channel here. We have the possibility of creating a future unlike anything we've ever seen in the past. Because in the past, our future was generated by individuals pursuing self-interest. And while self-interest is a strong motivator for why anybody would engage in Nikken, that will create an outcome. And if there's enough people motivated by self-interest, that'll create a bigger outcome. But can you imagine if there was some kind of a consensus? If the synergy of that vision was much more together, then where two or more are gathered, there's going to be an exponential result. And that's what they were talking about in Latin America yesterday or the day before at the event for the celebration of the 15th anniversary. They were talking about synergy and exponential growth. So the managing director of Nikken Latin America, the sales director of Nikken Latin America, both on stage talking about exponential growth. That we've been doing well. There's no question about it. We've been doing well. But now it's time for exponential growth. So they've caught the vision. They're sharing that vision. And I think it's important that we do the same. We embrace the idea that regardless of what your past has been, regardless of what your previous successes have been in Nikken, none of these things are a reflection of the future unless you hold on to it, unless you're holding the past. And it's one, the past is the past. It's great that we have one, but I would much rather create a future in alignment with something that's more exciting. I don't want to relive the past. I want to live something new. I want to live something even more exciting than the past. And the past was exciting, but I want to live something even more extraordinary, a reality that we've not yet seen. We don't have Nikken as a household name. We've not seen that reality since you've been involved with Nikken, since I've been involved with Nikken 28 years. It's not a household name. We haven't seen that. I know in Japan they did see that. 15% market penetration in Japan. So why haven't we succeeded at creating that? It's because we've been operating as individuals with self-interest. And I like Dave Rolf's position on that. Vested interest is a very, very important factor in why the business of network marketing works. But what if we went beyond network marketing? What if we actually took everything that network marketing has to offer, the best of network marketing, but worked together collaboratively to create a unified vision of the future? Where when you are out there over the next few weeks during Christmas season, talking with people, it's with a vision in mind that you're able to speak, not a past, not your past, not our past, but with a vision of a future reality that's made possible because, number one, we have a past. We have a formidable company that has been able to negotiate the waves of the economy over the last 40 plus years. That is extraordinary as a feat in business, no matter who you are. So that's one. We have a future because our technology has proven itself not only important, but necessary. Water is not something that's likely to disappear, nor is the need to sleep. And hands down, we have what it takes to assist humanity in the vital areas of life. Nutrition as well, as our nutrition has become so compromised. So hands down, we have a future based on a past, and the past is not a maybe, it's a for sure. So what creates a possible future is going from being obscure in the minds of the population to a household name. How do we go from obscurity to something that everybody knows about and talks about? How do we do that? Well, the answer is vision. We have a vision to do it. We have a vision to create a market penetration so extraordinary, so expansive, that you're going to ride a wave that's bigger than any wave previous. I want you to think about this for a second, because this is the economics of this. If you consider all the business that Nikken has done in the entire time Nikken has been on the planet, 40 plus years, and half of that time, in fact, next year will be the 30th anniversary of Nikken North America, next year. Great celebration. In that time frame, what has Nikken's market penetration been? Because that's the measure of the potential of the market. What has Nikken's market penetration been in the last 30 years in North America? Well, I'll tell you why it's a moving target. Because we have growth in the population. If it was a static population, it would be a number that we could probably measure. But the fact that we actually have growth in the population, then we're always losing ground. We seem to be losing ground every year. There's more people in our market than there was the previous year. And if you added up those new people, that's more people than we've penetrated or talked to in the entire year. So we're losing ground every year. Wow. So you're telling me that the future of Nikken is ripe and possible and open for any generation to come because our market penetration is next to nothing. It's less than 1%. Compare that to a time when Nikken hit 15% market penetration in Japan. So I look at that and I say, okay, from a business standpoint, if you want to be part of something huge, you need to be part of something that's penetrating the marketplace in some significant way. Whether you're Starbucks or you're Virgin, Atlantic, whatever the company is, whatever the commodity is, you need to be part of the penetration of the market. And that's what determines the value or the size of the potential of the opportunity. Well, when you got less than 1% market penetration, but 43 years of absolute golden history, proof, it can't be this way forever. Something has to snap, and that acceleration happens. Well, what it takes always is vision. Always. And now when you have the directors of the company and the CEO of the company talking about globalization, when you have announcements that we're not officially allowed to make, myself as a member of Team Kaizen, but I can tell you, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, globalization is very real and it's already in effect. You just don't know about it yet because it hasn't been announced officially. But the idea that we actually have the potential to market Nikken globally and to create a global awareness of who we are and why we're doing what we're doing, this is so big. I mean, if you just look at our market, any market, pick a country, throw a dart on the map, we're practically non-existent in any one of those domains. So we have huge potential. And if you believe, like I believe, that our products deserve to be here, that humanity deserves the connection to this technology, then as I know, there's a huge future here. There's a bright future for us. We're not going to become redundant. And that's the one problem that products have in the marketplace, is they become redundant. Right now, all the fuss and the huss is about the legalization of marijuana or CBD oils and whatever. That's just a blip in reality, because that becomes part of a bigger picture. What people are really aiming at, what people really want, is another life, a different life, one where nature rules. And Nikken is all about that. It has always been about that. So we're the brand when it comes to this. And now it's time that we represent that brand, not from an individual's point of view, not from your own personal perspective, not from your past, but from a future possibility based on the knowledge that, number one, we have an incredible history. And more importantly, we have a future of potential, because the market is virgin territory. So I want you to keep those things in mind as we move to the next conversation, which is, I want to remind you of what we talked about last week. Last week, we talked about the book, The Secrets of the Lost Mode of Prayer by Greg Braden, and more specifically, that feeling is the prayer. Feeling is the prayer. Have you noticed that leaders in all forms of leadership really create feelings among their followers? The goal of the leader is to create a following of what? Not of them. We're not looking to have people follow us. We're looking to have people follow a vision, align to a vision. We call this call aligning with success. Our definition of success is a little different than what's normal out there. We define success as the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. It's an ongoing thing. It's where you're pointing your efforts towards, not where you've arrived. That's not a definition of success. So again, coming back to the point I made earlier, regardless of your past, regardless of your history, regardless of previous successes and failures, those are just simply milestones along the destination of the direction you're going, as long as you're moving in the direction towards the fulfillment of your purpose, which is fuller expression of those 5 pillars of health in a balanced approach. You are a success. This is the message that we're delivering to the world. We have a new definition of success, and we have a new way of achieving it. We have a company that can assist us in achieving it. So with this concept of collective vision, where I want you guys to imagine in 2019, something happens beyond any of our comprehension. We'll be able to look back and say, do you remember when? But something happened that just changed everything, and we couldn't keep up with the demand. Something happened where all of a sudden what seemed to be a struggle and an endless struggle all of a sudden became like the wind in our sails, and we were blown forward. I want you to imagine that. And I want you to get really in touch with the feeling of that. The feeling of being propelled rather than pulling. Imagine for a second. The feeling of flying effortlessly rather than running against the wind. I mean, those are visual, and I'm sure you can connect the feeling with that. But I know for sure that feeling is the prayer. I know for sure that if we get our feeling aligned correctly, where 2 or more are gathered, we are going to experience something where individuals will never experience, but a collective will. And that's that collective growth, that exponential growth that we've been really fighting for, but it's not We can't fight for it anymore. The idea of fighting for it is the problem. We're creating the fight. It needs to be effortless. It needs to be by divine grace and gratitude. It needs to be because it is right. It needs to be because people need to know what we know. It's only fair. And it's good. And so if we can align with our feelings of that, what it feels like to be part of something that's so good that it's like you have the wind to your back constantly, you've thrown up a sail, and all of a sudden your boat, you're like just trying to steer this thing. That's the feeling I want you guys to have. The feeling of being propelled. Now, I know Latin America is going through that feeling this month. As I said, for those of you who came on late, those of you who are watching the playback, over 200% growth in this month, November, over October. In what month? That's wild. I'm talking about organizational. I'm not talking about an individual. If you're one person and you sponsor somebody, you just had 200% growth. But if you're thousands of people and you've got 200% growth, what do you think that looks like? That's wild. And that's what is imminent for us. And we're going to have their help. Why not? North America, it's a great market. North Americans need this as much as anybody. So I asked you guys to think about or to feel about something, to put to the test this idea that feeling is the prayer, and see, just experiment with the idea. Just see what happens in your life when you bring that feeling as the foreground, as the forethought, you become extremely aware of what you're feeling at any moment in time. I asked you guys to become aware of this feeling concept over this past week. And I want to just open up the lines to anybody who has something they'd like to share that they may have experienced as a consequence of shifting their vibration into feeling and seeing what's happened. Now, I know during the holidays, it's a lot easier to do because you're supposed to be grateful for Thanksgiving. That's the whole point. But I don't know, when they throw these things like Black Friday and people going absolutely berserk to buy something, I just think that's the antithesis of everything it's supposed to be about. It is so anti everything I believe in. So I'm not a big supporter of black anything. I'm a supporter of abundance consciousness, not scarcity consciousness, which is what that creates. I got to get there first before somebody else gets my thing. That is a horrible, horrible way to create a Thanksgiving, in my opinion. That is so non-divine in nature. So that's my personal opinion. I don't know if you guys like Black Friday, but the notion of it, in my opinion, is everything opposite of what we're talking about when we're talking about creating our own reality, creating abundance consciousness, knowing that the supply is endless because there's only one supply. There's only one supplier. That infinite mind of the infinite creator. It's not the limited mind. So when we think that way, we see the world from a different point of view. So how many of you, if anybody, would like to share anything that's taken place over the last week that you can correlate to this feeling of feeling as the prayer?
Mike, Barb Satterwhite shared. Maybe she could unmute.
Where?
On the Platinum Alliance call today.
Okay, great. Hi, Barb.
Hey, oops, hang on a minute. Hi there. I'm playing with my video. It's so funny because I was just texting Madeline back and forth because I basically had a confession to start with. And then I said, okay, I have to tell you.
I had the class today, Mike. I'm contacting and inviting. And so I asked Barb to share. So I'm the Catholic, but she did the good confession.
I'm a good Baptist. Anyway, what I was trying to tell the group was, it's all about the flow and feeling good. We're working too hard at this by having all these, and don't shoot me, but all these goals that you have to do to hear. Yeah, you need the vision's a better word. Goals have always been, I know you need goals, so I'm not downing goals, but I have to tell you, in my past life in administration, goals were that connotation of goal just was a negative, because it was something that was just dictated to you that you had to do. So I've never liked the term goals. So I use intention. And I read them an article from Mike. It was an article from Science of
The Mind.
Science of the Mind. And it's an old article from 2009 that I just found again the other day. I love it. And the difference between intention and goals, you eliminate the judgment and you eliminate the outcome. And then what goals do is that kind of hinder the flow. So if you have an intention and put that, as you would say, a vision out there or what you want, and just let it go and feel good about it. So that's kind of the gist of what I was going through.
Well, you know what's interesting about that, and I'll tell you why I run the risk at contradicting myself in the past when I spoke of goals, because people are afraid of goals. But I prefer decisions more than goals, and I'll tell you why. A goal is almost something that you have to keep in front of you. And when you're keeping something in front of you, it's as if you're saying, it's always here in front of me. It's not here, but it's in front of me. It's an acknowledgement that you're actually not there, that you have not actually achieved. And so having a goal is a contradiction to how the law works. The law, if feeling is the prayer, means you have to feel as if you are already the recipient of the achievement. And that's hard to do if you're constantly reminding yourself that you still have to achieve it.
That's how the discussion went today, and the results that Barb is getting, and the example I was an A for Ruth on a call this weekend, and she was blown away with what happened as a result of that. And I have really been working on this past week, the assignment of being in that feeling place. And so today was kind of the beginning, and it was just a half an hour long. Barb is the facilitator next week, and she was texted earlier, I don't know what.
Now what am I going to talk about?
But to follow up.
Talk about it. Keep talking about it. Personal experiences of it. Yeah.
Other people didn't have a chance to share.
But Mike, I thought I love to hear you, because I started out with this group by saying this, because I wanted to talk about intentions versus goals, because that term goal has always been for me. But anyway, but what you just said, and I remember last week, and I had to write it down because I love it. Prayer means you are surrounding yourself with the answer. So in other words, it's all the things we've all heard about. When you're wanting something, act as though you already have it. Feel like you already have it. So that's what I'm trying to get my head around with trying to tell people how to deal with this, is not to have this rigid, I must do this, but you've just given me another, what's the word I want, another explanation, because if that goal's out there, it means you don't have it. And we need to act like and think like we have it.
And if you do that, by the way, then it's not with anxiety, it's not with judgment, it's not with fear or apprehension of not attaining it. There's none of those feelings. So your date with destiny is in the rearview mirror.
Your date with destiny is in the rearview mirror.
It's already happened.
Right.
It's already happened. It's not about to happen. It's already happened. So if we consider then the idea of feeling as the prayer, when he talked about pray rain, remember in the story, he does this thing in this sacred place, and he goes to the sacred place just because it's the sacred place, and it's where he can establish that feeling, that firmness of that feeling. But it only takes place in a couple of minutes, and then they go for lunch. That's it. It's not something that is an ongoing thing that he has to continue to do because he hasn't, because he's doubtful that it's actually happened. It happens once. And then you trust it's happened. It's done. It is done. And therefore it is done. And then you go about your business knowing that it's done. The feeling of the confidence, I talk to my girls again, I've used this example in the past, but this is a good example. My niece, for instance, she had to write her I forget what they call it, entrance exam for medical. I mean, it's like a huge thing. Study for a whole year for this thing. And I said to her, just before, I said, how will you feel once it's done? And the feeling is always the same. Everybody always says the same thing. Relief. So I said, what does that feel like? Describe that to me. And you can feel it. They take a breath. It's like we do that. We can breathe. We're in the flow. It's like, oh, the anxiety's left our body and so forth. I said, now, that's the feeling I want you to have going forward. It's done. And so you connect to the feeling of the thing as it's already happened. But first you have to connect to it. What does it actually feel like? So the exercise, the real exercise, is not only finding out what you want, but trying to get yourself into the place of feeling it as if it's already happened. And the more energy you put into that, connecting with it, it's as if what you're doing is you're taking the radio station and you're just trying to get the static out. You're just tuning it to the point where bang, and the static is out and it's just clear as a bell. Now you can hear that music. You're relieved, you feel it, you let it flow, you just embrace it. You're surrounded by it, you're immersed in it. That's exactly what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about. So when you look at your business, you have to pick a point in space and time where that business looks like something. And the better you are at visualizing what it looks like and getting into the feeling of that, that's why the visualization exercise is important. That's why it's important, by the way, to have some visual interpretation of what a successful business looks like. One of the reasons why we put together that concentric circle diagram is because most people look at a royal diamond business or a diamond, it's so abstract. It's numbers. It's very abstract. It's hard for us who are humans and we think in pictures to interpret information based on numbers. So there has to be some kind of a visual understanding of it so we can imagine. And so the concentric circles is great because it's like the pebble in a pond, the ripple effect. You can see that. You can imagine that. And so you start to see how that looks, and then you see what the results of that are. And it all started with one idea, the circle of influence, multiplied through others. And so it's the visualization of that, the understanding of that. You can get in touch with the feeling of it and imagine it much more crisply, much more clearly. And if it was this simple, then why is it so hard? And I can tell you why it's so hard. Because every time you're exposed to information by the general populace, you're exposed to information that's highly distracting, highly disruptive to your free flow thoughts of abundance, prosperity, etc. The compromise to our intention is extremely high. I mean, just that whole notion of Black Friday that permeates. I'm telling you, the news in Canada was how Black Friday has now become the more popular thing than whatever it is that we used to have. So, and then when I was in, I guess it was the Europeans, I saw something on the news. Oh yeah, it was the BBC or something reporting on the fact that Europe is now adopting this Black Friday concept or whatever. And I'm thinking, you see, and you wonder why the masses will never experience joy and fulfillment? Because they're being led like sheep into a consciousness of scarcity. And that will always leave them wanting. Yes, Barbara.
My daughter posted something on Friday. She said, why is it that everybody gives thanks on Thanksgiving? They go around the table, they thank everyone, tell what they're grateful for, and then the next day they tromp all over each other, knocking them over just to participate in Black Friday. I don't get it, she said.
But Black Friday started at 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock in most retail places. It's on Thanksgiving. You can't even finish your meal. Everybody had to have meals earlier to be able to.
Okay, so here it is. What you're saying is what this Black Friday is just it's a symptom of the consciousness, because it's just one aspect of how people operate without thinking. This is a population that's not thinking. They're clearly not thinking. They're just simply reacting, because that's not a pleasant experience. That's not something anybody would want for anybody that they cared about. So what I'm talking about is the difference between success and failure is not an outcome. It's an attitude. It's an outlook, not an outcome. And so when you start to move into a prosperity consciousness, when it starts to become how you are, it's just the nature of who you are, because you now know that you are a co-creator in the process of creation, and the source of all creation is so much bigger than anything you can imagine, but you're part of it. It works through you in order to create, and it does so by a very simple set of instructions. It says, I bring to you that which you allow yourself. That's it. And so how do you allow the flow? You align yourself with the feeling of it fulfilled. Because
so that helps what you said. It's not an outcome, and goals always have a measurable outcome.
Yeah.
So
if
really
it's not,
is that intention and enveloping one with the feeling. And saying prayer is the feeling, helps for me to visualize and to feel the vibration, the vibrational resonance.
The good thing, at least by having of setting a goal, the one thing I can say that's valuable about it is it asks you to construct an outcome so that you can start to imagine what it actually looks like. What does it look like, this thing finished? And then you connect to the feeling of it. Now it's that day, you're on stage, now feel the reality, feel that as if it is. And so the goal really is maybe a useful exercise for just creating a connection to the vision and the feeling of that vision. But other than that, if you're constantly reminding yourself of the goal, then you're saying it's not yet there.
Is your goal not your predetermined why?
No, your why is your purpose.
Okay.
An example, for instance, somebody says, oh, I want $10,000 by June. Okay, why? So the goal might be 10,000 by June. But why? What are you going to do with that money? And then you connect to the emotion. And that's the key, is the feeling of the emotion fulfilled.
Mike, would you repeat, you said, I bring about what you said something about, you bring about what you want.
I bring to you that which you allow yourself.
What you allow. And how you allow is?
By feeling the feeling of having it. That's just the way that the operating system works. It's like if you don't know how your computer operating system works, it's just going to be a piece of material on your desk you can point to, but it's not going to be of much use to you. And I'm saying the people who know what I'm talking about know that if you can create hysteria around something, you can create a big result around that thing. And I am of the opinion that there are people who are working this law in their favor and not necessarily in the favor of mankind. And so I believe that there is in fact a conscious awareness of these laws, and it's not always in the hands of the good. But because the law doesn't care about morality. It doesn't care if you're morally good or not. It's a law. It doesn't behave according to morality. It's a misunderstanding of the nature of the law when people think that God is playing judge. No. In fact, there's not a piece of scripture that supports that idea.
The night that Maggie and I kind of co-facilitated when you weren't on the call, Carol Hackbart, are you on tonight? Yeah, there you are. Carol was asking, and Maggie did what you're doing now, and being able to help the dialogue. And I don't know, Carol, would you like to speak to that? Did you hear that night where Maggie was kind of saying the same thing about the feeling? Carol, are you there? Akbart?
I see her, but I don't think she's on the phone.
Okay, she may not be on the phone.
She'll dial in. So we'll keep an eye on your
Okay.
dialing in on
So
that.
I guess just to connect to what you're saying, Barbara, when she was on that stage, accepting the humans being more word, that vibrational joy that she was experiencing was the decision, not a decision, and she's been moving in that direction. And it's happening with Maggie also, who was able to articulate what you're articulating. And what I'm hearing and seeing and feeling, and I've been working on it, waking up and having that quiet time in the morning. And you're right, whether it's 15 minutes or whether I've extended it to an hour, it does carry you throughout the day. It's easy to come back to the feeling that you start out with if you really take the time to do that, to get connected in that prayerful vibration, which is what I prefer to call it too. So the excitement is Christmas is coming, and we all want a gift for Christmas. And if in 2019 it's really going to happen, that it's, I think, when you started out with the visualization with us in the beginning, I just got right into it. I just felt my energy getting higher. And that is something that today on the PA call, we were talking about us being a mastermind team to one another and really helping one another. Same thing here. We kind of have a core group that's here all the time. And so it's kind of time to move to that next level and really supporting one another in a collegial mastermind team. And that's what I believe is happening. It's spread from here up to the PA call today and the night when you weren't on, when Maggie led that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know whether, and so it's feeling as if that's happening. It feels, I guess, when we start with the judgmental, the 6 inches between our ears, which is easy to go back to that, is why isn't it fast enough? When we ask those why questions, rather than just really get into the feeling about it, feels good to be there.
Well, and the thing might be too, when we question why isn't it fast enough, maybe we should catch ourselves and say,
stop it.
It's fast, and I love the feeling that it's getting faster. Because fast enough is a judgment.
Yes.
It's observing a certain result and then judging that result. And of course, the minute you judge that result, that's what you're going to perpetuate.
Yep.
Because you're locking that in. Rather than, it's funny because I had this little thing going with my girlfriend the other day, and I sent her the science study that happened on May 27, 2015. And what they did was they did the double slit experiment, but they used a helium atom. They actually used a physical thing which is subject to gravity, which is very different than a photon. It's one thing to do with theoretical physics experiments with photons and understanding that at the quantum level, physics, everything acts differently. But at the physical level, material level, then it's subject to all these other things. Well, it turns out that, no, it's not just that the reality is it actually happens that we live in a subjective reality, and that the physical reality that we're living in is also subjective, which means things like our DNA is actually being written according to our frequency and our vibration and our thoughts. Our physical form is not happening to us. It's happening through us. When you start to understand the science is actually showing us this, teaching us this, that these notions correlate to a lot of theological understanding, especially when you go far enough to the unadulterated texts, like in the Aramaic versions, then what you understand then that this ancient knowledge that's been teaching us about how to create and all of the stories that have been shared with us are stories to help us understand creation concepts that it's been misunderstood or misread, especially when the information got lost. But it's still there. If you go back to it and review it now with a better understanding of what was being said, a higher consciousness, awareness of what's being said, then it completely correlates. And now science on top of that is showing us in labs that this is actually real. That these are not just theological notions or, aspirational ideas. These are real things. So it turns out that we do shape our reality. We do shape the experiences that we're having in our life. It's, even though there's 7 billion other people, but the collective experience of those 7 billion people is what we're experiencing together. We're experiencing a collective experience on Earth, but each one of us is contributing to that experience. So within the hologram of the collective is the individual's experience. It's like being on a train. I like the metaphor. I'm on a train going from Toronto to Chicago. The train's going from Toronto to Chicago. That's not changing. And it takes various routes through tunnels and so forth. Sometimes there's rain, sometimes there's snow, sometimes there's wind. This train is getting from here to there. But on that train, I get to decide who I talk to, what I'm going to eat, if I'm going to read or not, if I'm going to sleep or not. Within the experience of that movement, I'm having my own personal choices within the bigger picture. That's kind of how I liken our collective experience on Earth as humans. We have a collective experience, and then within that context, we have our own individual experience. So, Carol, I see you've got your line set up. Were you going to add to?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to have my phone on a phone call and have the visual without the sound, and
That's okay. We get that. Go ahead.
I don't know I can't remember exactly what the question was with Maggie. What you meant, Madeline, I guess.
You're muted.
I can't.
What she helped me with, Carol, with your asking for help. Carol was asking for help about getting people to respond, I think, and attend events and so forth. And Maggie put it into the flow, everything you're talking about now, and asking them, how do you feel? You just said that, Mike. How does this make you feel?
Yeah.
Rather than, what do I say? Carol was asking, well, what do I say? You know, the scripts, we're looking always for these how-tos. And just ask more questions, but ask the feeling questions. How does this make you feel? How did it make you feel when you experience the blanket around you? How does it make you feel when you have more money? Everything that you're saying now. And that was, it changed the whole tone. Do you remember that conversation, Carol?
I would say I wasn't asking for a script, but I think you were giving answers according to a script.
Yes.
And Maggie, I asked her how, just to simulate what she would do, and that's how she took through. And she's counseled me that way, before, that ask the questions of how would that make you feel when you're looking at the 5 pillars. And then if you had balance in the particular areas that they make, how would that make you feel? And that I resonate with in terms of a dialogue. A script is not who I am, in terms of, well, like Mike, you were saying, you can have the perfect script. Last week, I think it was, you were saying, you can have the perfect script, but how you say it, if you don't have the feeling and the vibration behind it, it's like, oh, this is a very exciting company, versus I'm totally blessed by this company, and I just, that the energy and the whole love that I feel, and the whole way that people care for one another. I mean, I don't know, but just to put in there that excitement and that feeling that you feel, to let that come, and it really does work.
Well, this brings me back to my first point tonight, my earlier point tonight, which was, if you can disassociate your past with your future, then you can actually bring into yourself, into your body, into your awareness, a feeling, a genuine feeling of excitement and enthusiasm for the future, not based on your past. And so, because the past has regret, it has all the emotions that are associated that are judgmental, And if you bring and doubt and fear and so forth, if you bring that into your present emotional state, then your feelings are clouded. And even though you may be speaking with the prospect about the future, or you may hesitate to speak to somebody. I think there's been a huge hesitation, in my opinion, on the parts of all Nikken consultants, myself included, to tell everybody about Nikken. I think there's been a huge hesitation. You second guess before you do it. Should I, you have to ask yourself, where's that coming from? What is the source of that hesitation? Because if you are absolutely overjoyed, if somebody asks me about my kids, you see my reaction. I mean, I just light up like a firework, and I can't help to talk to them, take the pictures out and so forth, because I'm so overjoyed. Well, what is it about our thoughts or feelings about Nikken and our relationship to it, success or failure, our judgment and relationship to it, that prevents us from being that person who is so excited? People have left Nikken to join another company so they can get that feeling back. Did they actually have to leave Nikken to get the feeling back? That was a mind job, because that's not what you have to do. It's what they chose to do, because that's a shortcut. It's a shortcut to say, because guess what's going to happen? They're going to get to the same scenario there too, because they're allowing the outside circumstances to determine how they're feeling. And that, as long as you let that be the case, you're never in charge. You're never in power. So what we want to do is we want to dismiss the past as a learning opportunity, as an experience, as one leg in the journey, as a milestone. In this book, he talks about the dark night of the soul. I don't know if any of you know what I'm talking about or have been through it. I know what it is. I know exactly what he's talking about, because the second I read the words dark night of the soul, I mean, I'm very familiar with that subject. So when he got into that, and you understand that this is actually part of the journey, that it's part of the growth that you're asking for in life, to be visited upon by something like the dark night of the soul. So when we look at our past from that point of view, then it's what makes us, what gives us greater depth and character, which allows us to have a higher appreciation for what it is that we have and what we're doing. It doesn't take away from us. It doesn't make us a lesser person. It's the exact opposite. If you don't know what failure is, how are you going to appreciate success, even the littlest of success? How are you going to share in that experience with your downline when they're going through it? So if you don't know what it is to feel that feeling, how can you be compassionate towards somebody who's going through it? How can you be a leader to help them navigate those waters? What makes you a great visionary, a great leader, is the depth of your purpose, the depth of your passion, your ability to connect and relate to people at all levels. So I look at the dark night of the soul, which is an extreme example, as the thing that made it possible for me to understand the human condition rather than live in the ivory tower, which is so easy to do when you have all the material success. And so I think that if you and I, if we can all look at our past as a blessing, every element of it, every dark night and every light day as a blessing that has enriched our life, has given us our life story, but look to the future with hope and potential, because even if it was just simple logic, which is what I started this conversation with, I said, look, guys, there's more people who've come into our country than we've touched with Nikken products. We're losing ground every day. So it's not a question of whether there's an opportunity. Get that out of your head. It doesn't matter how old Nikken is. Our market penetration is virtually non-existent. Richard Branson came into the market when there was 62% of the market penetrated. 62% of the cell phone market was already gone. And he was asked in an interview, why would you consider coming into the market now? All the big players are here. They've already got all the market share. He said, because 38% of the population hasn't made up its mind yet, and I want a small piece of that action. And that's why he's a billionaire. He doesn't look at I missed it. 62% of everybody's got a phone. I missed it. No, 38% haven't decided yet. I want some of that. Well, I mean, can we not take a little chapter page from that lesson and say 99% of the market hasn't heard of NECAN, and we're losing ground every day?
But that's the attitude that you also spoke about at the beginning. Instead of the individualistic attitude, the attitude of what we can give for the whole and how we can work collectively.
Yeah, if it was an individual point of view, it'd be like, oh, I talked to everybody on my list. See what I mean? That is how that can change everything. When you look at it and say, everybody on my list, if I talked to everybody on my list and I asked everybody on my list for one name, I'd have a whole new list. And everybody on my list knows 100 people that I don't know, so I've got at least 10,000 more people I could talk to if I actually get out of myself, get out of my way, and look at the potential and not look at the past as a failure. You see what I mean? It all comes down to, how do you feel about yourself? How do you feel about being involved with this movement? How do you feel about being a leader in this movement? It's all about how you feel, because that's dictating how you're interpreting information. And if you're basing it on a negative past, or the golden years are behind us, then what's the future going to look like? What's today going to look like? How are you going to approach today? Who are you going to talk to or not talk to because of it? Right. Healing is the prayer.
Thank you.
And it's, what I found like in this last week, again, is the whole, to keep reminding myself of the feeling. And it happens in little ways. And I was at my cousin's for Thanksgiving, and there's a lot going on there. And her husband is very negative about NECAN, and I don't, I'm very bubbly about who I am. I focus on and who's, grateful for being there. And I wasn't, I bring my,
we're getting you intermittently right now, Carol.
Darn. Okay. Well, anyway, my cousin's husband, when he heard, they just had gone to Italy, and when he heard about the opportunity, that I'm working toward for NECAN, he said, well, we'll help you get there. Like, we're going to be buying a lot of stuff. And it was a moment in time, and it passed, and he's got issues that, I won't talk about here. But the point is, I hold on to that in terms of the feeling of what it is, even though then that moment passed. But it's like a seed that was planted in how I shared things, with enthusiasm, but totally appreciating them. And I think that's the hope is, or that's the deal, is to focus on the gift that was given in that moment, and not then look at anything as a fit, or, well, look at the failure as what I did was everything that was could be viewed as a failure as a seed planted that's coming to fruition, the gestation period in its own time.
Well, let me pick up on that and leave you with a doozy. Here's a doozy. If you want to consider your past and look at maybe why it's not going fast enough or whatever, ask yourself, in hindsight, what was I feeling? What was the feeling I was really feeling? Was I hosting doubt? Was I hosting anxiety? Was I hosting fear? Because if you were, then why would the results surprise you? In fact, if anything, they should be a reminder that the law works, that it's a reflection. And so when we looked at, and the humans being more training, or the concept of I plus M equals R, intention plus mechanism equals results, and at the end of the day, we all agree that it's 100% intention. Yes, there is a mechanism, but that's an infinite number of possibilities in the mind of God. So it's not even worth addressing. The idea is, had there not been the intention, the results would not be there. So if the results are a result of intention, then what exactly is an intention? What exactly is prayer? There's a note that I made to myself, and I think I shared this with you guys last week. See if I can find it. Here it is. Faith demonstrated is the alignment of thoughts, feelings, and actions when the three become one. So this experience until now is just that, an experience. But if we want to really reflect on that experience and gain altitude or insight from it, then look to it through the lens of this concept. What were the feelings? Because then you will look at the past and realize, oh my God, it's a fulfillment of the promise. It happened exactly as I felt it was happening. And so the reality that you created was merely a reflection of an inside job. Because you have to be brutally honest with yourself. What was I really feeling? You can say, oh, I was thinking all these thoughts. Doesn't matter what you're thinking. What were you feeling? That's what you manifested. Not what were you thinking. With that, we're past time. So I'm going to say, think about that. If you want to turn your past into a success, see in fact, if the law does not exactly correlate, that what you were feeling is what you were manifesting.
And the other quote from the article I talked about was intention plus attention equals miracles.
There you go.
Attention.
Intention plus attention, what you give focus to. So focus on the feeling, focus on the wish fulfilled. Surround yourself with all the beautiful feelings and emotions and visuals that go with the wish fulfilled.
And not think so much. I think we've overthought a lot.
So guys, have a wonderful week.
Thank you.
And so again, reminder, next week I'll have a surrogate. One of you, if you want to volunteer, I'd be happy to have you as host on my behalf. I'll be taking the week off. So thanks for joining. Share if you think it was.
I'll be in physical therapy. So think of me, Michael. Yeah, I'll think of you.
Everybody have a great one. I'm going to be grounding on the beach. That's what I'm going to be doing.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Cheers, everybody.
Bye.